This is an unrehearsed program. The views expressed are those of the guests and not necessarily those. Today's topic.
Is lunacy as much a part of genocide as cruelty in Passion for Truth award-winning program?
Welcome to another edition of Passion for Truth. Is lunacy as much a part of genocide as cruelty? During so many genocides, the perpetrators recorded not just the atrocities, but the madness behind them. Let's ask our guest, Dr. Edward Hudgens, Executive Director of the Atlas Society Center for Objectivism. Dr. Hudgens also was editor of Regulations magazine at Cato Institute. Dr. Gregory Staunton, President Genocide Watch, also President International Association of Genocide Scholars. And Holly Jalani, political analyst, also chair of the Asian Task Force of the United Nations Association's National Capital Area. As an American citizen, she has lived in Iraq for a number of years and has inside knowledge of war in Iraq and its aftermath. Retired Ambassador Jonathan Dean, advisor on international security issues affiliated with Union of Concerned Scientists, and Dr. Abul Hassan Ansari, a researcher on the historical perspectives of Indian events impacting on Muslims in India and abroad. Welcome you all.
Thank you.
Dr. Ansari, does lunacy stand out more than cruelty in genocides?
I think it's perhaps both of them. Cruelty more so than the lunacy, and lunacy more than the cruelty. We don't know which one is which. If you look into the history of genocide, the people who have committed genocide are basically psychotic. They are lunatics and they are fanatics. Whether it happened in Darfur, it happened in Chechnya, Kashmir, or Palestine, no matter where. Look at the mind of these people, like the Hitler. I mean, we know so much about the Holocaust. These are the mini Holocausts that are happening, and the people have the same kind of psychology or psychiatric disturbances that Hitler had. These are the mini Hitlers who are carrying out these activities.
The perpetrators, Ambassador Dean, during genocides act like machines and unaware of how preposterous they can come across to other people.
That's true. That is often the case. On the other hand, your definitions up to now leave out the political objective of all of the genocides that we're aware of. They each have had a very fixed political objective. And in my opinion, in the case of Darfur, our current example, what we will see there is not a clear resolution, but a fading away of the problem, leaving a kind of very unpleasant status quo, which is going to give food for this argument that you raised now. But to leave out the political aim from genocide is a mistake, I think, in terms of analyzing it.
Holly, what do you think? Were they crazy when they started counting the names of the people they were killing, obsessively recording who they were killing?
I think what frightens me is that I don't consider them crazy. I always think that human beings that are really cruel and perpetrate genocide as a form of furthering their own political agenda, whatever form or fashion it may take, or religious agenda, or whatever it is that they're trying to do, are usually not crazy at all. They know exactly what they're doing. It's a way of getting rid of a problem, whether it was the Nazis doing it to the Jews or, throughout history, when you look at the Huns or anybody else, if you look at modern times, if you look at Rwanda. I don't find any of the perpetrators crazy, and that's what frightens me a lot more. What I find very scary is that those of us who think we do not approve of genocide stand by quietly and let it happen. That I find even more frightening. We're the enablers.
Where are you, Greg, on this?
I think it's very important to remember that there are two kinds of rationality. One is called ends rationality, and the other is means rationality. This is a distinction that was made by Max Weber in some of his early works on sociology. Genocide may be founded upon an irrationality of ends. In other words, where racism, for instance, is at the heart of the ideology of the regime, such as the Nazis. And nevertheless, the genocide can be carried out in a very rational way. So you can have, all the railroads running on time to get the victims to Auschwitz. You can have the whole bureaucracy engaged in what can only be called a rational pursuit of an irrational end. I think that's one of the reasons why genocide is both a question of rational political purpose by a regime, as Ambassador Dean was indicating. One of the best books, in fact, that's come out in the last few years about genocide is a book called Final Solutions. And it basically analyzes genocide and points out that each of the major genocides can be explained in terms of the calculations of a ruling elite with an exclusionary ideology who wanted to keep their political power and control, and to do so generated the genocide that they then in fact visited upon the victims. And so I think if you look at it that way, you see that genocide is not simply the act of crazy people. It is in fact an act by people who are really acting quite rationally, even though their fundamental assumptions may be in fact irrational.
What do you say, add a rational political purpose, as Greg says?
I think that is part of it. I certainly reject the notion that it's lunacy in the classic sense of, well, these people have some sort of mental problem. Maybe some of them do. But I think it's attributed, in addition to the political reasons, which I completely agree with, to what I would call tribalist thinking. That is, thinking of people as members of a group to the exclusion of others. That's important. Most of the great moral thinkers throughout human history have looked at what unites human beings. We are all creatures with a rational capacity. We all have free will. We all have the same sort of emotions and feelings. If we want to live good lives, we have to use our minds, our reason. We have to figure out how to do these things. Tribalism says, I'm just going to look at you by some superficial characteristic, perhaps your skin color, perhaps you're a member of an ethnic group, perhaps some religious group or what have you, and then attribute the ills of your group because you think of yourself not as an individual, not as someone of moral character. That is, I think it's that tribalism as opposed to individualism that's at the root.
But the thing is, it's the course of action we are talking, where the lunacy stands out. For example, Nazis, after all they committed all those atrocities, after all transporting those people, they thought they could negotiate with their allies.
What it was, I know, and by the way, there's some excellent work that has been done in this area, but one of the things I would call people's attention to is Hannah Arendt's Eichmann in Jerusalem, which is subtitled The Banality of Evil, that looks at the fact that to the extent that people actually believe this sort of thing, to the extent that people actually take their membership in a tribe to be their distinguishing characteristic, to the extent that they reject reason and the things that unite people, they're going to be driven to kill their fellows. And this is where the means comes in. They've got this utterly irrational end and they give into it, and therefore they commit these atrocious acts, as you saw in Nazi Germany.
Is that kind of lunacy, however you want to word it, a rational political purpose during the genocide?
I don't think it's lunacy. I think you're really onto something here. I've studied genocide now for the last 27 years, and I think this ethnocentric characteristic of human beings is really at the heart of the genocide problem. It's the us versus them mentality. That, in fact, I've developed a theory about the process of genocide that's called the 8 stages of genocide. And in fact, people can see it on the genocide website if they'd like. But the first stage, and it's essential in every single genocide, is the us versus them definition.
Yes. Us versus them, Halina, during the 1984 Sikh genocide in India and 1985 Muslim genocide in India. The then government perpetrators burnt some parents alive in front of their children and then would say in the evening in the same breath that they were very proud of India being a secular country.